All right, so guys, we are back. No, it's all you.
Guys, we're back. Part 2, Q&A. As we just heard, Shaq's here. So last week we did Q&A, which was predominantly nutrition, and then today we're going to do predominantly training chat. We actually did a massive episode on training probably about 4 weeks ago now, where we just broke down so much about training and the structure and the reason and everything behind it. And I got a lot of awesome feedback from that. A lot of people reached out and said they learned a lot and it just like made things make a lot of sense.
That's cool.
So that's really cool. If you're someone who feels a little bit lost with training, especially I think training can become a big thing. Training can drop right off in December, from someone who worked in gyms for 10 years. Good time. Here's a little side note. If you're someone who's planning on joining the gym in 2024, go in December. Start in December because they are so quiet. So many people, when we think about it, do the whole like New Year's gym thing. Gyms in January and February, fucking wild.
Jungle.
And if you're nervous, if you're a little bit like self-conscious or just a bit intimidated in the gym, if you go in December, you can like get your bearings, get a feel for everything and just get through that like nervousness and awkwardness. And then when you walk in January and everyone else is there, you're like, yo, this is my gym. Get out the fucking way.
Legit.
So that's a massive tip. And so many gyms usually come December do like join now, get the rest of the year for free. So keep your eye out for that because
Win-win.
yeah, I think that that's so perfect. And I think so many people think like, oh, I wouldn't go much, so I'll just wait till January. Even if you literally go once a week or twice a week, you don't even really follow anything or whatever, literally just use it to walk around and be like, oh, that's where the leg press is. That's where the cables are.
There's always that giveaway, like that first 2-3 weeks, like, what the fuck's that machine?
Even for like us, like I've literally been in gyms for nearly 20 years. If I still walk into a brand new gym now, you just have that thing of like, where's the leg press? Where's the cables? Where's the rack? And so much equipment moves so differently these days.
Yeah.
Like you get on a leg press or something and you're just like, I don't know how to do this. And then you just feel like everyone's watching, which no one is. No one cares.
Yeah.
But I just think December can be the best time to get that sorted. What I was originally saying is I would listen to the big training episode and then even this one as well, heading into like 2024 if you're going to get into training. These episodes will be really helpful, but I would also get in the gym in December.
Yeah. Sorted.
Yeah, now we can get into it. Yeah, guys, Shaq will have a quote for us at the end. It better be good because I wasn't happy with last week's. No offense.
Shit. All right. Are we ready to get underway?
Yep. You got the Q's, I got the A's.
Are classes a bad way to build shape and tone?
Oh, that's a great question. What a good start.
Shit, we're on.
Are classes, so like group fitness classes,
I'm assuming,
a bad way to build shape and tone? This is a great question because so many people do them. I feel like they're very popular these days.
They go off.
And people love them. And then I think when you get a hothead like Ruby ranting and raving about training, you can start to wonder if your training is a waste of time. So training is never a waste of time. If you're up, you're active, you're moving, you've ticked the first box and the main box, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So if someone, I've said this before, I do rant and rave about structured training, and I'll talk about that in a sec with this question. But if someone has found the thing that they enjoy, whether it's going to gym, it's going to classes, if it's freaking horse riding, water polo, walking, I don't care. Like if you've found your thing that makes you move, amen. I'm not going to criticize it. What I think, like where I think the issue comes in and the reason I get all fired up and we see other people get fired up is I think that sort of like a double whammy. Some gyms in some places kind of like with their marketing, they're like, do this class for toning, do this class for a booty, rah, rah, rah. And that can be a lot of bullshit. There can be a lot of fluff there when we really break down the science of training. And I think that happens. And then over here, people also think, like we sort of said in that episode, I just need to go to gym and smash myself as hard as I can to be air quote toned. And I think people are in that mindset. Gyms are advertising shit that might be a bit fluffy and bullshit. Maybe you combine those two things together and people are thinking they're working towards something that they might not be. That's where I have an issue, is if people have been misled by a facility or a program or a coach or whatever, or if they don't have the understanding themselves, so they're kind of misleading themselves, not intentionally, but does that make sense? So I'm not against classes. I'm only against people thinking they're going to achieve something through a style of training that they're probably not actually going to achieve.
Yeah, 100%.
Does that make sense?
100%.
So make sure you're educated and understanding of what that style of training is that the class offers and what it might be optimal for or what it might not be optimal for. Like, what are the pros, cons, all of that. If you're aware of those things, but you're like, I just fucking love this class, that's awesome. And some people love them for the community and the accountability and the intensity or things like that. So again, I would never say that's wrong if someone's like, oh, I just love to go to this class because it's high intensity. I love getting my heart rate up. I love sweating. And I love the group that go at the time that I go. Like, win-win. That's not a bad thing at all. And even you love the community of group places like Revel and stuff. And even Jolie's, like back when I worked for Jolie, Shaq would go in there and train because you loved the group thing.
Legit. Like, yeah, it's definitely when you find a good one, it's good. Like,
yeah, so they're not all bad. There's definitely pros to them. And I think even if we actually come back to this person's question, is it bad for building shape and toning? They can still be good for these things.
Yeah.
If we think about what we spoke about on the episode a few weeks ago about training, we want to have structure in place and we want to have progressive overload in place. So super quick summary of that is that we want to make sure we're progressing with our training and we're loading our muscles through weight, sets, reps, all of those things, and we're progressing with those things over time. So obviously when we train in a gym and we follow a very structured program, we can be pretty fucking certain we're doing that. Yeah. If you're going in every week and doing like my legs and glutes 1 session, and then you go back and do legs and glutes 2, and then you go the next week and do them both again, you know, like I'm hip thrusting, I'm squatting, I'm lunging, I'm deadlifting, whatever. I've got all my weight, sets, reps written here. I know that I'm following a structured program, and I know that I'm progressing that program if I look at my weights and sets and reps and I gradually move those up. So you can know for sure that you're doing that when you're in the gym, but you can still do that in a group class.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like if you go to these classes and like, let's say for example, they do, I know, like a goblet squat. So you hold a dumbbell in front. The first time you go, you might hold like a 5 kilo, and then eventually you probably grab a 6, and then eventually you probably grab a 7. And do you know what I mean? So you're still going to progress. I think it's obviously just different because then the next week they might not do squats at all. So you're not going to progress with that movement. But I think overall you can still progress with the weight and the reps and the time. Even in a lot of those classes, they might do like 30 seconds of something. So there might be like 30 seconds of squats, which we don't really do in like a gym program.
Yeah.
But even then, on day 1, you might do like 8 squats in 30 seconds. And then the next time you might do 9, and then you might do 10. And then eventually, so if you look at your first session that you did in that gym compared to like maybe when you're 6 months in, I would say you're doing more, you're quicker, your range is better, you're probably lifting heavier weight. Like, so you are progressing.
Yeah, legit.
So I would say it's not the most optimal way. If you're just like, my number one thing is to like literally shape my physique. Like I want booming hammies. I want to see like the definition in my quad. I want big juicy glutes. I want the capped delts. Like if you're literally trying to build a physique, I wouldn't say that group fitness is the best way to do it because you just can't guarantee that structured progressive overload on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that you can't achieve tone and shape like this person has asked over time through what we just said. Like you're still working your body.
Legit.
And you're still going to gradually push it more and more all the time. Have you got anything to say on that?
No, it's just think it's just learning about that progressive overload. And like I see so many people either do the same class back to back. I think it's like beneficial.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of came into my mind before is sometimes we've spoken about this a little bit on the podcast, but the real sort of growth of like muscle happens in the recovery phase. And sometimes in this group fitness setting, people can really get caught up in that more is better mentality.
Yeah,
and
less is more.
Yeah, and you're impeding your recovery. If you think about training legs twice a week and just going, like we said, you know it's structured, you know it's progressive, all the things, and you've absolutely hit like peak weights on a leg press and a hip thrust and everything, you're not going back and doing that again tomorrow.
Legit, because when you work out, all your muscle fibers break down and then you repair so you can do that again. So
yeah, so I think when people are following a structured program in the gym, that doesn't really happen. Whereas with group fitness, sometimes people can just go again and again and again. And like you said, people are like back-to-back classes or morning and nights and whatever. I think that's where the lack of real understanding of training comes in. If you're someone who purely just thinks more is better when it comes to training, that's not true.
Yeah.
So you really do want to seek a little bit more further education and understanding with that. If you're someone who does go to group fitness and it's just like, I need to go as often as I can. If I can do double sessions, it's awesome. If I can go morning and night, it's awesome. That's not the case. We do want to factor in recovery, and we want to actually understand what we're doing in the gym and why, and get all that progressive overload and everything in place. I don't want to repeat that other episode too much, but that's the one thing I'd probably say you want to look at. You want to make sure if you're going to a group fitness class, still be mindful of how can I keep progressing? Like, do I always grab a 5 kilo dumbbell? Could I just start grabbing the 6?
Yeah.
And then when, in a few weeks' time, do I grab the 7 or whatever? Just little ways that you can ramp that sort of stuff up. And like I said before, I would just make sure, like, if you wanted to be like a bodybuilder, or if you just wanted like the thickest fucking built physique, I wouldn't say group fitness is the answer. Yep. But with this person, they've said shape. Oh, see, shape, to me, when I think shape, I just think you want to be deadlifting, squatting, hip thrusting on a progressive program. But I'm probably a little bit biased. But tone, they've said tone as well. And I think, you can definitely factor in group fitness.
Yeah.
So long as you really understand what's going on.
And educated around that.
Yeah. Just bulk binge the pod and then join it like Ruby.
Give us a follow.
Follow Coach Shaq. I don't think we even plugged you in the last episode. So Shaq posts heaps of training content.
I'm getting there, girl. Coach_Shaq_. But you'll find me.
Don't forget the second underscore, kids.
Yeah. Second one. Is it bad if I don't feel certain exercises in my glutes, for examples, RDLs?
Another spicy question. I love that one.
Got it.
Is it bad if I don't feel certain exercises in my glutes, for example, RDLs?
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. This is cool, and this is common. No, it's not bad. Next. No, it is not bad. What I think a lot of people don't understand here, or don't give enough thought or credit to, is the difference between sensation versus stimulation. And what I mean there is, when we progressively overload a muscle, like we've spoken about so much recently, when we're training a muscle to that point of like a heavy lift, we're close to failure, like we're lifting a heavy weight for reps and it's hard, we're stimulating muscle growth. Like you said before, we're breaking down the muscle fibers. Like, that is literally the point. We want to stimulate that muscle to be like, yo, we're fucking working.
We're on.
There is a very big difference between sensation versus stimulation. If you think about that, sensation is the feeling of something. So this person has said, is it bad to not feel something? If I said, Shaq, for this whole podcast, sit here and squeeze your glutes on and off, like squeeze your ass, relax, squeeze your ass, relax, right? Massive sensation in the glutes. Like, you would feel that in the glutes.
Yeah.
No stimulation. Are your glutes going to grow? Would you give anyone that as an exercise prescription to grow glutes?
No.
Exactly. Or to grow, if I said biceps, sit here, flex your bicep, relax, flex your bicep, relax. Your bicep's going to absolutely sensation. You're going to feel that.
Yeah.
But it's not stimulated to the point of growth. And I think people, well, it's probably not spoken about enough. Even if you think about that term I just said, like sensation versus stimulation, I don't think I've ever mentioned that on the podcast. So I don't think that that's spoken about enough. And I think to most people, there's just a belief for whatever reason of like, if I don't feel it, it's not working. But it's just actually not true. And I reckon a lot of people who have probably thought that in their life have also had a time where you've done a session, felt like it wasn't that hard, or I didn't feel it that much or whatever, and you wake up the next day and you're like, fuck, my legs. Like, have you done that?
Yeah.
You do a session. I've literally done it right now. Like, I trained on Monday and I was like, whatever, neither here nor there. And then last night I was just like, fucking hammies, like what?
Yeah.
But there was nothing in that session where I was like, oh, my hammies are cooked on this exercise. In terms of sensation, there was nothing where I was like, oh, I can really feel my hammies. But I did, I think I did trap bar, RDLs. So absolutely, like hammies are going to work in there, but I wouldn't say I like felt them.
Yeah.
But then for the next few days, they've been cooked. And I reckon a lot of people can relate to that. Think about a time where your session's been neither here nor there. Like, it might have been a good session, but you didn't feel like, oh my God, I'm fried. But then in the next few days, you're like, oh, like glutes, hammies, quads, whatever it is. So I think that's important to clock. And then, like I was saying, if we think about sensation, if you sat here and just squeezed your butt cheeks on and off for an hour, massive sensation, but no stimulation there to warrant growth.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, like sometimes we don't feel things and get the sensation. That's not to say they're not stimulated, especially, did this person mention RDLs?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about an RDL, the glute, like that's a lengthened, the glute works through the lengthened range in an RDL is what I'm trying to say there. So there's a massive stretch on the glute and then we come up. If you think about, I reckon a lot of people are going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me on this one. People love hip thrusts because of the sensation. Right? You do a hip thrust, you squeeze your glutes at the top. I can feel it by that 12th rep, 15th rep, whatever you're doing. Glutes are burning, right? And people form that very big connection of hip thrust for the glutes, right? And I'm a big fan of hip thrusting, I think, absolutely. But we've said this in that training episode. We want short and range, mid-range, long-range exercises in a program. If we think about, like I said, the RDL is a lengthened range exercise. The hip thrust is a shortened. Think about when you're on the floor and like your ass is on the floor, you've got the bar across your hips and you go into a hip thrust. Small movement, really, from the floor to the top part of that hip thrust, not that long. And therefore, and when we say like shorten range, lengthen range, all of that, if you think about the working part of a hip thrust, I don't think I've ever explained this on the podcast. If you think about the working part of a hip thrust, the glutes are like air quote working at the top, right? When they're shortened. If you think about when your ass is on the floor and like knees are up, backs up, and like the glutes are a little bit stretched out in that bottom position, as they work, they contract and they shorten.
Yeah.
As opposed to think about an RDL, when you lower that bar down, and you hinge the whole body and you hinge forward, you lengthen the glute.
Yeah.
Right. So the glute is working when it's lengthened as opposed to the hip thrust where it's shortened. And I do have a point, I promise. Most people really squeeze the glute in that shortened range like a hip thrust, and then they form that thing in their mind of like, when I hip thrust, I feel it so much. Hip thrusts are so good for my booty growth and my glute growth and all of those things. I would say, like I said, we want all ranges. I'm all for the hip thrust. If I had to pick, I'd say RDL for glutes.
Yeah.
Is a bit better. They work through a lengthened range. It's a big movement. Yeah, but most people, if you didn't know everything I just said and you said what is better for you and your glutes, most people would say hip thrust because of the sensation that they feel in a hip thrust.
Yeah.
There's so many things we can think about here, and I want to try and keep it brief. If you think about a hip thrust, most people, and this is something probably to clock, especially if you're more experienced and you probably think that you're killing it with training, and you probably are killing it with training, but these are the little things you want to start to look at because these will really make or break progress. Most people chase a heavy hip thrust. Like for a lot of people, a lot of women, the hip thrust is probably the heaviest thing they're doing in the gym. Hip thrust or a bridge, like difference being hip thrust is back on the bench, bridge is back on the floor, but same movement, really. And everything I say here is pretty much interchangeable between those two. They're both shortened. Everything's the same except the position of the shoulders, really. But most women, their heaviest lift in the gym when they've been training for a while would be hip thrust and or bridge.
Yeah.
Right? Then we start to get really, like we really connect all those dots of like, okay, I feel the hip thrust the most. Like I do that big squeeze, big sensation in my glutes. I can load it heavy. This is the key to my booty growth, right? Most people in that position are chasing the heavy hip thrust and they're loading and loading and loading the bar. Then when they perform the actual rep, their whole body and their momentum of their whole body lifts it, and then they squeeze the glutes at the top.
Yeah.
Right? So you get your whole body behind a hip thrust, and it's just like, boom, literally thrust it up. When you're in that top position, squeeze the glutes, and then we form this thing of like, fuck, my glutes work hard in this exercise. Your glutes didn't do the exercise. You stimulated the glutes at the final second of that exercise, but you didn't use the glutes. You probably used them a bit, but it wasn't just the glutes that got that up.
Yeah.
And then we really form that big connection of like, I feel it so much. I go so heavy. I squeeze my glutes. By that last 2 or 3 reps, they're on fire. They're cooked. again, if we sat here and squeezed a muscle for a while, it would be on fire, it would be cooked, but it wouldn't be growing.
No.
And we need to really pull that apart, because when we think about an RDL, most people aren't loading that in such an extreme way. Most people are mindful with RDLs, because I reckon most people have had like back injuries or things like that. Most people are very mindful not to load an RDL too quickly or too intensely past the point that they can. If you think about having a good weight on an RDL that you can still keep good technique, but it's still quite heavy, think about the difference in time under tension, like for the actual glutes alone. Time under tension meaning how long is that muscle working. And if you think about a set of 15 reps, let's say you're doing 15 RDLs or 15 hip thrusts. If you do 15 hip thrusts and you use your whole body to lift the bar, and then you just squeeze at the top for 1 second, and then most people will do that, and then boom, the bar crashes down. We lose so much benefit when we do that. If you think about an RDL, time under tension, you start with the bar in front of you. Most people are pretty slow in a good way with an RDL. Like no one's rushing RDLs when they're heavy. So you might take like 1 to 2 seconds to lower down. You might do a 1 to 2 second hold at the bottom, 1 to 2 seconds to come up, right? It doesn't sound like much, but if you think about all of them being 1 to 2, let's say the average time under tension is 4 to 5 seconds. 15 reps, 4 to 5 seconds of time under tension on the glutes is 60 to 75 seconds of time under tension. And you do 3 sets, you're looking at like 3 minutes of time under tension on the glutes, right?
Yeah.
In a hip thrust, if you've used your momentum and your whole body to lift it up, and then you just squeeze the glutes for 1 second at the top, and then you let the bar crash back down, you've done 1 second of time under tension on every rep. 15 reps, 15 seconds, 3 sets, 45 seconds of time under tension. In the RDL, 3 minutes plus of time under tension when we do the maths on the total volume and the work.
Yeah.
Versus the hip thrust. Yet people will be like, I feel the hip thrust so much more because of that squeeze at the top.
Yeah.
But every other part of that lift didn't really work the glutes. If you could scale that weight back a little bit, I mean, you could try the weight you're doing right now on a hip thrust. I feel like I've gone away from the RDL question, but I'll come back to it. If you tried the weight you're doing right now and said like, I'm not going to use any momentum, I'm going to contract my glutes before I even move this bar, keep them contracted the whole way up and the whole way down. The eccentric part of the lift, meaning the lowering part of the lift, is so underrated to people who don't know about it. If you think about people like dropping weight, doing reps and then just letting things go, you're losing 1 to 2 seconds of time under tension on every single rep on 3, 4, 5 sets, whatever. That's so much more time that you could be working a muscle.
Yeah.
So coming back to my thing, if you were to contract the glutes, not use momentum, not use anything, lift it up, keep that contraction, keep the glutes working and lower it down with control, see if you can do it with the weight you're doing right now. If you can't, like it most likely will be that you can't. You need to cut it back a little bit when you take away the momentum. So then scale that weight back a little bit and actually like use the glutes the whole time through the lift, through the hold at the top, through the lowering. This is where we've spoken before about ego lifting on the podcast, where people are just chasing that heavy, heavy, heavy. If you cut that back a little bit, you could actually increase your time under tension so much more. And if we think about like total volume of that session, if people are still with me, amen. Because Shaq's looking at me like, where is she gone? If you think about the total volume of everything happening there, people are like, I don't want to scale my weight back. If you scaled your weight back by like 10 or 15 kilos, let's just say you're at 110 and you bring it back to 100. Yes, you maybe have like scaled it back by 10 kilos, but if you can work your glutes for like 60 to 120 seconds more every session, that's worth a 10 kg scale back.
Yeah.
So that's so far from what this person asked about, not feeling the RDLs. But that's what we want to think about. If you're just making that connection of like, I have to feel it in my glutes for it to be effective, No, you don't. Because even if you think about everything I just said about the hip thrust, people are really like, I feel this. But there's not a huge amount of work and growth happening there.
Yeah. Okay.
Know what I mean?
Got
So, yeah, I wouldn't be just... I mean, you want to look at technique and, you know, get someone to check your technique and make sure it's all right. But I wouldn't just be like discrediting things like, oh, well, I can't feel them, so they're not working.
Yeah.
Because that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
If you think about that RDL movement, like I said, you're going through that lengthened range of the glutes, and then like as you lower that down, and the peak of that range is when the glutes are lengthened. Like the peak of the RDL, when you get the bar to the lowest point, the glutes are super lengthened. And then we like stand up and we shorten them. And then most people would be like, I feel it at the top, because you squeeze them at the top.
Yeah.
And when you squeeze them, you get the sensation. And then you get this thing that's like, sensation is, I need, like, when I feel them, and I need to feel them to grow them. But you've just put them through this big working set and you've stimulated that muscle.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I feel like there was more glute questions in this thing.
Yep. The next one.
The next one is a glute one.
Yeah, best exercises for building glutes.
Everyone's like, well, probably not the fucking hip thrust. No, definitely the hip thrust. I feel like we maybe touched on this in the last episode we did.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at someone who wants to build glutes, I'm looking at programming a push, a pull, a bridge, and an abduction. Meaning, like, we want to push weight, and we did speak about this in the last time.
Yeah, we did.
We're working during the push part of the movement. So we're like leg pressing, we're squatting, lunging, split squatting, anything like that, where when you push through the legs is when the work happens. And then we also want to pull. So if you think about like a RDL, a deadlift, a back extension, cable pull throughs, glute ham raise, anything where you're like pulling
the weight
away or like pulling the weight, we want to have a pulling movement as well. Then we want to have that like bridge thrust sort of movement.
Yeah.
And then an abduction. Abduction is where we look at working like glute min and glute med, which is sort of that air quote shelf look that people are going for. So we're going to work with our glutes. We've got glute min, glute med, glute max. Glute max is the biggest, like maximus is the biggest, sort of the big round glute in the back, if you will. But the glute med and glute min sit a little bit more out to the side and towards the top. And that's where we see people wanting to like build that shelf look. That's predominantly the glute med. The glute min will pretty much work in a lot of those exercises that work the med, but the med is bigger. Our glute min is tiny. If people Google it, they'll get a really good visual of like the glute muscles. It's cool to just have a visual and understand that a little bit more, I think. But what I was getting at there is that final movement being abduction is where we tend to isolate the glute med a little bit more. And like I said, they're all going to work on most exercises. But if you think glute max being the big dog, it's like the strongest muscle in the body.
Yeah.
So if you are doing big RDLs, big hip thrusts, big squats, whatever, that max is going to kick in and do most of the work. The min and the med are just like along for the ride.
Yeah.
So then most people want to finish with some sort of abduction, meaning if you think people get confused on adduction and abduction. Are you confused?
Nah, it's just flashbacks.
The easiest way to remember it, abduction is when you are taking away from the body, and think about something being abducted. It gets taken away. And then adduction is when we bring the leg closer into the body. And if you think about adding something in. So abduction is like we see a lot of cables, or people even just like lay on their side and lift their leg up and down. So you're abducting the leg, and that glute med, if anyone's watching, is the sort of the catalyst and the main driver of that movement.
Yeah.
So what was the question?
The best exercise of building glutes.
I've got that on my list. Best exercise for glutes. So push, pull, bridge thrust, and abduction. You want to like factor in all of those into your thing. And then like we spoke about just 5 seconds ago and a few weeks ago, working through that lengthened, shortened, mid-range, all of that. There's so many things where like structuring a program, is quite an art form, in my opinion. I actually love it. And this is what we spoke about a lot in our episode is I think some people think that it's like, oh, just like leg press, leg extension, leg curl, see you later. But I like look at a program and I'm like, okay, do we have a push-pull bridge? Do we have an abduction? Of those, this is where I think you want a professional writing your programs because you have push-pull bridge, let's say, and abduction, and then you have short, lengthened, and mid-range exercises. You can have a pull movement that's lengthened, and you can have a pull movement that's shortened, and you can have a push that's shortened and a push that's mid-range. And so you got to sit there and look and be like, have we covered all them? And then have we covered all them? Maybe we've got a push and a pull, but they're both lengthened. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then we need to move one of them for a shortened, but still make sure we keep the push and the pull. And this is literally what I do when I write programs. Like I use big spreadsheets to write programs. And to me, I love it. Like this is my jam. And this is why I get annoyed. This is why I get annoyed when people are like, don't feel like that. Might do a chest press instead. Do you know how many spreadsheets went into that bloody program? But there's real reason behind it. So I would want to make sure that you're covering those bases.
Yeah.
Guys, potty producer K Money has just reminded me that I did a YouTube video about this so long ago on a whiteboard where I literally broke down like program this on this day and this on this day and why we do all that. So if you scroll back, first of all, subscribe to Eat Like Ruby on YouTube if you're not already, but then scroll back and find it.
Get it, girl.
Thank you.
I feel like you just answered this.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
What is it? Is this the last one?
It's 2 more.
Okay.
What are the main factors you consider when writing a program?
These questions are like perfectly ordered into each other. Yeah, so we just said a lot of that. I feel like, everything we just said, but also what you and I mentioned with making sure it's realistic for the amount of days and everything that person wants to do, like not really probably being able to do 3, but like committing to 5. So as a person writing a program, that's what you want to think about. Like, is this person actually going to come in and do all 5 of these days? Or are we better off to write a 3-day program that they're actually going to work with? Because if you think about everything that we've just said and what we said in other episodes and stuff, nothing is random. Everything is structured. So then if a person says, I'll do 5 days, and then they only end up doing 3, they miss 2 of those sessions all the time, the structure is gone. The progression is gone because we've sat there and made it all work together and make sense, and then you've literally left out half of that work. So it no longer does make sense. So you want to make sure that you're really being realistic and working with all those facts to make sure that the person's
like working for them.
going to actually follow the structure that you spend hours on the bloody spreadsheets putting together. And the other thing that I like to think about, I think some coaches don't think about this. Last week we spoke about, the meal plans and all of that, where coaches maybe don't put themselves in the client's shoes. I love to put myself in a client's shoes when I am writing, especially a phase 1 program. So if we think about the fat loss phase, for example, we do 2 6-week training blocks. For that first block, I love to think, if this is a person's first time in the gym, what is fucking scary to a person first time in the gym? What do we avoid? I don't want, perfect example, I would love people to start phase 1 with a trap bar deadlift. For a woman to walk into, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, if you're a badass bitch and you don't have any problems with this, I'm all for it. But for a lot of women who might be nervous stepping into the gym, whether it's your first day or whether you've been before but you might still have some nerves, if we're then like walk through that massive rack and free weight section and try and get the trap bar deadlift out of the rack, that can be so daunting for so many people. And I think coaches that have been doing trap bar deadlifts for 6 years are like, oh, you just walk up and grab it. Like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
But I always want to put myself in the position of like, if I was super nervous and I was walking in, even like we said in last week's episode, this person is getting their head around flexible dieting and MyFitnessPal. And even on this day in the gym, they're probably getting their head around Trainerize.
Yeah.
And then you've like just again, like overwhelmed them with so many complex things. So I'm always just so mindful of like, what is going to be quite simple and easy for a person to just open up the workout and be like, oh yeah, that's right there. Or like, dumbbells, I can just grab them and find a quiet corner in the gym. I'm always so mindful of that. Even things like changing attachments on cables. Like you and I have probably changed 1 million attachments in our life.
Yeah.
Someone who's never been in a gym would walk up and just be like, the handle in this video doesn't look like the handle that's on there right now. How the fuck do I change that? And we have to keep that in mind because if you've written someone a whole workout like that where they're like, I had to go and get the big trap bar deadlift out of the rack. Like we have this inside joke in Eat Like Ruby where getting the trap bar out is the hardest part of the workout. But it is like you try and pull it out of that thing and stuff. So if you're putting someone in that position and then they're like, now I don't know how to change the cables and now I don't know how to set up this machine and whatever, it's too much for people. So I always want to look and say like, what is quite achievable? There's already going to be a level of discomfort and maybe apprehension or whatever. You don't want to make that worse.
Yeah.
So I always think about that. And then even if someone is like if we're a few months in or a few phases in, obviously people have probably settled in and a lot of those nerves are gone. You still want to be mindful of like things that actually just don't make sense, like supersetting. Think about where we train. So we train at O2, which if people live on the coast, like big, busy gym. If I said do a superset of leg press, leg extension, leg curl, good fucking luck getting a leg press, leg extension and leg curl. And then what do? Take 3 towels, chuck your towels on everything. Be like, sorry, no one can use these because I'm doing a triple superset. Yep. It's so unrealistic.
Yeah.
And people either then are like, oh, I actually can't get those 3 machines empty at the same time. Or I'm nervous as in a busy gym to just claim 3 machines and say no one else can use them. Or I got halfway through and someone took my towel off and jumped on my leg press. It's actually quite unrealistic. So you don't want to put people in those situations where they're just like, very unlikely I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you want to think about that. If I ever do supersets, I'll think about things that are like, I'll often do like a goblet squat and a leg extension because you can jump off the leg extension and do your goblet squat right there.
Yeah.
And if the gym's quiet or whatever and you want to go somewhere else and do it, you can, but you don't have to. Because even if you think about doing supersets on machines, you don't know what everyone's gym looks like. So you could have one in that corner and one in that corner.
Exactly.
And then it's like just run between machines for each set. Is that all right? It's just not realistic.
Legit, yeah.
So you've got to really, I think this is where some like trainers can forget that you're just dealing with a human being. And some trainers are so obsessed with the science and the numbers and the facts and all these things. And we all are. Like, you know, you see, like you and I would look at programs from a really like scientific, like, oh, what a juicy program.
Yeah.
But then you've got to look and be like, is there too much shit here? It's like when you see trainers that are like, here's a 27-minute mobility warm-up. Bitch, I've got 35 minutes. I can't do a 27-minute mobility warm-up. So, and again, think back to what we said last week where you've got someone who's like a full-time student and they've got a job, or they're a mum and they've got a job and they've got a million things to do. And then you're like, oh, just like 27 minutes of mobility before your sesh, and then your actual sesh goes for an hour, and then you've got to do some cardio and then a cool down.
It's like not happening.
I fucking spare 3 hours in the gym. Like, no. So I'm so mindful of that as well. Again, in a perfect world, you know, from an educator point of view, we might write a program and be like, it'd be sick to do this and this and this and this. And then even when we look at Trainerize, when you like save the workout, it'll say how many exercises. Sometimes you see it, and even though some of them are like warm-ups or stretches or whatever, I am mindful of a person seeing something in Trainerize and being like, 14 exercises, fuck off. And your mind instantly goes there.
Yeah.
And then even if you open it up and you're like, oh, okay, hang on, like 6 of them are stretches.
Yeah.
But there's that initial thing where a person's like, 14 exercises, kill me now.
Legit.
So you just have to be so mindful of how it's going to be received by a person.
Yeah, 100%.
Because like we said last week with the nutrition stuff, you're just going to lose people.
Yeah.
And then they don't achieve their goals. You've got people dropping off or just not showing up, not communicating because they feel like they can't stick to the shit you've put in place. They feel like they're failing. Like, you've got to actually really find, it's such a sweet spot, I think, where obviously we don't want to make it so simple and so cruisy that it's ineffective. But how can we just remove any fluff so that a person can just get in and get it done, whether it's with a meal plan, whether it's with training, whatever. You want people to be able to look at shit and be like, yeah, this works for me and my lifestyle for the most part.
Yeah.
Maybe I have to get up 10 minutes earlier. Maybe I do have to do half an hour of meal prep every Sunday or whatever, but I don't have to go to the gym for 3 hours every day.
Yeah.
I don't have to only shop at an organic supermarket. Like, there's a line.
Yeah, legit.
Do you know what I mean?
All right. Biggest thing you're personally working on right now with nutrition and training. Biggest thing personally struggling with right now, nutrition and training.
Yeah, a fair few people asked that. Like I said, a lot of people were sort of like, what's your goals? What are you working on? First of all, follow along on YouTube and you'll know. But we've done a few podcasts about this and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I feel like those were two questions. I feel like the same person wrote them because they were written the exact same way.
Two-parter.
Yeah. So I am going to do some episodes probably next week about this. Personally working on.
Yeah. With nutrition and training.
I'll give like a little quick summary. Personally working on with nutrition and training. And what was the other one? Personally struggling with.
Yeah.
What I'm struggling with is so random. And I've been saying this to Shaq all the time. I love training early. I hate eating early. But I love eating before I train. And it's like I can't find the sweet spot. So if I wasn't training, I don't like to have my first meal until like 9 or 10 in the mornings. Like, I like to just get up, get shit done, and then sit down and have a meal at like 9 or 10 a.m. But I like to train at like 6 or 7 a.m. and I will not train without a meal. So I'm just like struggling to find
that sweet
the
spot.
sweet spot. Yeah. Yeah. I'm really struggling. And I can't find the right time of day to train. And I definitely don't want to sound like a brat because so many people just have to train at a certain time. Like, if you had a full-time job or whatever, like, you have to train in the morning or you have to train at night, whatever. But I reckon so many people who work for themselves or like other coaches, whatever, can relate. Having too much freedom can actually just do your head in. Like, if you had a full-time job, you're like, I just have to go now.
Yeah.
I fucking can't go at 10 a.m. I can't go at 2 p.m. Like, I go now or I don't go. When you pretty much write your own schedule, I'm like, I'm going to try 10 a.m. sessions. I'm going to try 2 p.m. And then I said to Shaq the other day, I'm thinking of trying night sessions, like 7:30 at night, which is awkward because I fall asleep at like 8. But I'm really just struggling to find the right routine with all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it. Watch this space. We'll see. Yeah. Most days I end up training around midday, but I just don't love it because I'll usually walk early, do a bit of work, have a meal, maybe 9 or 10, do a bit more work, have a pre-training meal, and then go to gym. Like, my motivation, my excitement for training is a lot better in the mornings. Like, when I've done all that work and stuff, I'm like, oh, now I got to go train. I'm just not vibing it. And once I'm there, I'm sweet.
Yeah, just getting there.
But it's just like, whereas like in the mornings, when I go in the mornings, I'm like, oh, let's go.
Yeah.
So I'm in a way better mentality in the mornings. But I just don't like eating early. I don't know why. That's not a like sports nutrition professional advice thing. That's just a personal preference. I just don't like eating early.
Yeah, I'm the same. So
just navigating that one. We'll see how she goes. And then, yeah, I think they said, what are you personally working on?
Yeah, with nutrition and
training. Yeah, I literally did a YouTube about this week. Like, it came out on Monday, which would be Monday the 23rd of October. So you can go back. I think it says like let's chat on the thumbnail, and it was just me chatting about my nutrition and training. But I'd say, and this is what I want to do a podcast on because I think it's a whole big topic and a cool thing to talk about. I would say that I'm very aware. Like, obviously I've always had physical goals, but I'm very mindful of my lifestyle goals right now. So in relation to nutrition and training, and what I mean there is like, I've said this a million times, I've done really strict deficits and everything in the past, and the number one goal was physique goal.
Yeah.
Right. And it was usually for like a photo shoot or something. So that makes sense. But I'm not really shooting or doing anything like that right now. And when I think about my nutrition and training, I kind of have physique goals. They're not too prominent. Like there's nothing major. And I'm very much like, what do I want my life of nutrition and training to look like in terms of like, I want us to be able to eat out. I want us to eat meals together. I want to not track. Like I haven't really been tracking my food. Yeah. I haven't tracked my food for a while. I'll track randomly, like I'll track a day here and there, or if I bring in a new meal, like I'll track it and sort of see what it looks like.
Yeah.
But I eat the same thing most days, so I just don't track them that often. But what I'm getting at there is like I'm just very mindful of what I want my life long term of nutrition and training to look like. And I think it's cool to, you know, if I probably will next year at some point say like, oh, I want to do a shoot for Eat Like Ruby. Let's tighten shit up. Let's track more strictly. Yeah. Like let's almost mini cut vibes probably into a shoot. Kind of like I did for the wedding. Like I just kind of did that for the last 6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah, true.
But then just hit a point where I was like, okay, I'm good. So I can loosen it off a little bit. And I'm just super mindful of, what I want my lifestyle to look like. And really asking myself, this is what I want to do the whole podcast about, but this will be like the little snippet, I guess. Do I want to adjust my whole lifestyle to be 2 kilos lighter and be able to wear extra small shorts? Or do I want to buy small shorts, be 2 kilos heavier and go out for tea? Really?
Yeah, okay.
And there's so much to say there. That's why I want to do a whole podcast, because there's obviously people that have very strict and intense physique goals, and I have nothing but respect for that. There's people that are trying to lose 30 kilos, so that's obviously their focus, and I have a lot of respect for that. But just for me personally, I've just been tapping in and really kind of just asking like, what is air quote worth it? If I was to say like, I really want to lose another 3 or 4 kilos, I want to make sure I fit an extra small pair of shorts. Like I want to make sure I've got a visible 6-pack at all times or whatever. With that would come like, Shaq, we're not going out for tea. We're probably going to eat different dinners, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And neither of them is right or wrong. Like I've done both. I have clients that do both. I have clients that have phases of doing both. Like I am so for any goal that anyone has. But just looking at my own goals, I'm just like, what is actually the most important thing to me?
Yeah.
And when I just think about like getting off another 2 kilos or whatever, I'm just like,
that's not it.
nah.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather go out for Palmer. We're literally going from here to the brewery to have Palmers. But honestly, like if I was like, nope, strict deficit, like I'm dropping more weight, whatever, I wouldn't be doing that at midday on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
No way. So, but then again, I'm like, lifestyle goals, mate, fiance, we're about to hit our 10 years together. Like, I want to fucking go to the brewery at midday on a Wednesday for a Palmer.
What a lifetime.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, honestly, 100, and that's what I'm about too, the balance. Everything part of it. So,
and I think it's natural to have phases where balance has to go to the side. Like didn't have balance for a long time in business because I just knuckled down and built my company.
Legit.
And I probably don't have balance when I'm 4 weeks away from a photo shoot or whatever. So I don't think the goal always has to be balance. I think when you want to really fucking get after something in life, you got to forego balance a bit.
Legit.
Like I think that's normal. But then I think for me, I'm a little bit like been there, done that. For the time being, I'm sure shit will come up at some point where I go again. But just right now, I'm like, nah.
Because, it's honestly a thing, like, for the moment for myself, there's not really much happening. But end of the year, next year, there's some big goals I want to achieve. So shit's going to change.
Yeah. Are you going to run a half marathon?
Yep.
Shaq's training for the half marathon, fam. You heard it here first.
First a half, right, then a full.
Fuck the full. Shit.
And then I want to do a trail.
Oh, my God. And then one day you're just going to run off and not come back. Fuck yeah.
Don't.
That is so cool. That's really cool. We can talk way more about that over the coming weeks and months. I think you, what we looked at, it was May, the
Yeah.
half marathon.
I think so, yeah.
First of all, Shaq was like, I think it's in January. And I'm like, dude, who is running 42 Ks in the middle of summer? Jeez, probably a lot of people.
Yeah, but honestly, I do love running when it's hot.
You do, yeah. Shaq waits until like the peak sunny point of the day and he's like, now I'm going running. I'm like, holy
Yeah.
moly.
I just love feeling hot and sweaty and just...
My dad was like that when we used to be camping. We'd literally all be like camping, just half wasted, eating chips, whatever. Dad's like, I'm going for a run. Like, what?
Because my mindset is, if you can do that shit when it's fucking hot and you're sweating that profusely, you can do it fucking early morning, late night, easy.
Yeah, you love the hot and sweaty runs, hey?
It's all about challenges in life.
Love it. Is that your quote?
No. If you want shit, make a shit happen.
Is that the quote? Is that the quote we've just waited 2 weeks for?
I had a good one, but I forgot it. But so wait for it. So, but honestly, like,
It can't have been that good.
it was a perler.
If you want shit.
Honestly, if you want to get shit done, make it happen. Like if you've got goals, got food goals, anything like that, make it happen.
I feel like you always say things like that almost counteract what because I'm just like, fuck goals, go for balance, whatever. Shaq's like, you got to go, make it happen. But I feel like that's just a perfect example of like, it's no right or wrong on no one size fits all.
Legit, like,
you've got something you want to do, go for it. If you want to go have palmies on a Wednesday at the brewery,
make it
go
happen,
for it.
like balance or training. Like goes down many avenues.
Yeah, I think we've hit the point of rambling.
I thought we started off that.
Our life is just a ramble. We are done.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, guys, like we said, I feel like we've crapped on so much in the last 2 weeks, but I hope there was some good takeaways in there. Like I said in one of these episodes, Shaq posts heaps of training content on his Instagram, so it's coach_Shaq_. So definitely check him out. The Eat Like Ruby Fat Loss Phase is officially open for signups for 2024. So get in there, guys. It is going off. It is a cool thing with the fat loss phase. I'll talk about it way more over the coming weeks, but it's all of the content, everything opens up for the people that want to rip in on January 1st, but the official day one is January 29th. So you can literally get started at any point that you want to in January. And if you are a January 1st person, what is actually a 12-week program, you could turn into a 16-week program.
Winning.
Pretty cool. So that's open. It's ready. Like I said, we're on YouTube all the time as well. So check out Eat Like Ruby on YouTube. Check out Eat_Like_Ruby on Insta. And I think that is everything.
That's it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.